only say that it is a rope even though you're seeing a snake. You can't tell me that my experience itself is that of a rope when I experience it as a snake. So I am the sole expert of my own experience. By the way, that's where all of this comes from, right? That you are the first and last stop in the analysis, at least of a certain kind of your own experience. What it really is a separate matter, but as that experience itself goes, you are the first and only expert in that. And that's the foundation of this field. Somewhere, it always comes down to you being the sole and only proprietor of your own experience.
Yeah. The statements themselves, I found quite attacking statements. On the one side, you say that in my own consciousness or my own conscious experiences, I'm not wrong. So I come as a subject. So you might tell a person that you're wrong, but he might not believe. Whereas you also say something about subjectivity, right? Which Descartes mentioned.
So what's interesting here is, let's go to the rope and snake, right? I may say I might be really scared because I feel like I'm seeing a snake. You can tell me this is not a snake, this is a rope. But you can't tell me you are actually seeing a rope. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm seeing a snake. You can't tell me that what you are seeing itself, you are not seeing. You can only tell me that what you think you are seeing is different from what you are seeing. That's the claim anyway. Of course, a deep, so one of the projects might explore a little bit of that is perhaps even our experience itself is social. So which is to say, you can tell me not just that you are seeing a rope, you can even tell me you are experiencing a rope. Is that possible? Like that to say somebody is more right about your own experience than you are. Is that even possible? Descartes thought that is impossible. Right. And we don't know. So the matrix is at the intersection of those two trends, so to speak. Right? That in the matrix, somebody could tell you that this is actually what you are really seeing. And they would perhaps be more right than you are. I don't know.
I think therefore I exist. But you said about the experience. But the cognitive character of experience and the cognitive character of thinking might be different. So because Descartes was not very sure about the world, external world. So he didn't admit, he was not very certain about the world. So if we take experience into that account, then we can say that we are experiencing the external world. So he was very certain about the thinking, but not about experience.
First of all, I think thinking itself is an experience. I mean, you can't. It's on the first person side rather than on the second. What you are talking about is what is it an experience of? Right? So I am experienced. So my experience is of a rope or of a snake. But what Descartes is trying to say is he's certain that if I am seeing a rope, then at least my sight is ropeness, right? The form of it is rope, even if, or is snake, even though it is really off a rope. So any hallucination or any kind of illusion. So for example, if I take two things that are very different in size, and I see them of the same size, happens all the time. You can do Muller illusions, all these things. Now, you may say that in reality, these two things are the same size, but actually, you perceive them differently. All Descartes is saying is that you can't tell me you're perceiving them the same. Even though you are saying you perceive them differently, but you are actually perceiving them the same. He says that you can't tell me what I am perceiving. You can only tell me the perception is wrong. One is a judgment and the other is so-called the bad experience itself. Because many people have debated whether you can make this distinction between the judgment aspect and the experience aspect. But I think that Descartes still has a very strong point. My first person subjectivity is sort of inalienably mine. And all the modern discussions of consciousness and other things, like Nagel's, what is it like to be a bat? So can you really understand? So for example, how do you know when I see red, a rose is red, you are not seeing it as blue? All of these sort of thought experiments are really Cartesian experiments. They're basically still playing upon the same intuition that somehow my first person experience is not accessible to me. Of course, there's an even deeper problem. It may not even be accessible to me. That is to say, my own experience may not be accessible to me. In fact, tacitly it happens to us all the time. So for example, if some of you have daily commutes to work, do you really know how you got there? You don't. I mean, you start up in the day. I mean, like, for example, you know, I mean, how many of you brushed your teeth this morning? Okay, who did not brush their teeth this morning? Do you remember how you did it? No, you just got up and it happened, right? So it is, in some sense, an aspect of your experience. It's motor experience primarily, rather than sort of visual or even in this case, taste. But it's more or less opaque to you.
I have a question to ask here. Can experience be unconscious? Recall some.
Instead of, so this is, I would put this into one of those gold star questions, right? And I would say, I don't want to answer that, because to answer that would to say that there is some fixed answer to that question. It's a completely open question. One traditional answer is no. The experience cannot be unconscious. It is by its very nature that to experience is to consciously experience.
I think that what the point that he made between experience and thinking, I mean, the distinction is quite subtle in a sense. Perhaps I might think about eating an ice cream, thinking right now of eating an ice cream, but I'm not experiencing that eating of an ice cream right now. So thinking and experiencing, it's different.
No, but when you are thinking of eating an ice cream, that is the experience of thinking of eating an ice cream. Right? It's not the experience of eating the ice cream, but nobody is saying that thinking is, so thinking has both a subjective aspect and it has an object, which is the object of that thought. In this case, it's that eating of ice cream. We should separate them out.
So it actually assumes that perhaps I have this notion of already having eaten an ice cream, so I'm carrying the baggage of my past memories of eating an ice cream, and then I'm thinking about doing it. Is it so?
That's too much theorizing. I mean, at this stage, we are at the ground floor of trying to understand the mind, and whether, I mean, what you are talking about is some kind of rational reconstruction where, oh, because I have experienced ice creams in the past, I can think about them, and therefore, no. I mean, I can also think about life on Mars, and I've never experienced Mars. So, in that sense, I don't think we should, I mean, conceptually speaking, thinking is an experience. Right? When you are thinking, you are experiencing that thinking. Now, whether you are how that experience of the thought is tied to the object of the thought. So, let's say I am thinking about a holiday in Hawaii. I may experience a holiday in Hawaii at some point. I may never experience a holiday in Hawaii. But how the two are related to each other is a question about the preferential capacities of thought rather than the experience of the thought.
So
let's actually break. We'll have discussions at the end of the session because I don't want to break the flow. So in general, if you have clarifications, please ask me. But so back and forth, we have half an hour at least at the end of every session for back and forth. We might also. It's only we have another half an hour therefore before we start the discussion. Okay. So what I want to nevertheless tell you is this subjective end of the mind is a very, very important piece. However one looks at it, whether it is conscious or unconscious, whether it is certain or uncertain, every tradition that has tried to understand how the mind works has paid attention to the first person.